Welcome to The Explainer. So today we are untangling a piece of everyday tech that I'd bet almost all of you use, but let's be honest, probably very few of us actually fully understand. We're talking about virtual private networks or VPNs. Whether you're working remotely from your favorite coffee shop, trying to bypass a geo-block to watch a show in another country, or just looking for a bit of privacy against online surveillance, you've almost certainly fired up a VPN. But how much do you actually know about what happens the second you click that connect button? Today, we're going to break down the genuinely incredible engineering behind modern VPN protocols. And then we're going to expose the pretty shocking reality of how these highly secure engines are being entirely compromised by the mobile apps that package them. Let's dive right in. To really get why this matters, we first need to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of the situation. The global VPN market is absolutely exploding right now, currently projected to hit a mind-boggling $62.1 billion in value. I mean, this is no longer just some niche tool for corporate remote access, right? It's this massive, universal technology driven by a huge surge in consumer privacy awareness, remote work, and people needing to bypass internet censorship around the globe. But there is a catch. With all this explosive growth comes a really dangerous assumption. We tend to assume that just because a piece of technology is universally popular, it must automatically be safe. Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts here. The basic blueprint of a VPN is actually surprisingly straightforward. When you run an app on your device, the VPN client, it generates your raw, plain text data. Now the VPN's entire job is to encapsulate that data and push it through what we call an encrypted tunnel, straight across the Wild West of the public internet. Once it safely reaches the VPN server on the other side, it gets decrypted and sent on to its final destination. But here's the key. This invisible tunnel is built using specific cryptographic protocols. Everything, the strength, the speed, the actual security of your connection, depends entirely on which protocol is used to build that tunnel. So engineers rely on these protocols, and right now, two of the absolute biggest names in the game are WireGuard and OpenVPN. And their core philosophies honestly could not be more different. WireGuard is kind of the modern prodigy here. It runs on this incredibly lean codebase of just about 4,000 lines, and it relies on a fixed, hyper-efficient encryption algorithm called CHA-20. Because it's so small, it has actually been formally verified by machines for cryptographic security, which is a massive win for trust. OpenVPN, on the other hand, well, it's the battle-tested veteran. It boasts a massive 70,000 lines of code, it's incredibly configurable, and while all that extra complexity does mean a larger attack surface, it gives OpenVPN this really unique superpower. It can route traffic over TCP port 443. To anyone watching, that makes your VPN traffic look exactly like completely normal everyday HTTPS web browsing, which is just brilliant if you need to evade deep packet inspection and bypass strict internet censorship. And this brilliantly illustrates how those different philosophies actually play out in real-world performance. In a really rigorous benchmark test run on Ubuntu, WireGuard absolutely dominates the throughput speeds, hitting a mean of 22.9 megabits per second. Meanwhile, OpenVPN, when it's running in that stealthy TCP mode we just talked about, maxes out at just 8.7. WireGuard pulls off this massive 2.6 times speed advantage largely because it operates directly inside the operating system's kernel. OpenVPN, though, has to constantly pass data back and forth between the application layer and the system kernel, which creates a huge bottleneck. Naturally, that massive speed advantage bleeds right over into our next metric, latency. Now, if you are gaming, making a voice call, or frankly just clicking a link and waiting for a page to load, you need this number to be as low as humanly possible. Once again, WireGuard just crushes the competition here, clocking in at a lightning-fast 4.7 milliseconds. Its whole design is stateless. That means it doesn't have to keep complex connection records alive in the background, so it can respond almost instantly. Meanwhile, OpenVPN running over TCP suffers from a laggy 14.3 milliseconds, primarily because of a well-known issue called the TCP over TCP problem, where the protocol essentially trips over its own retransmission delays. Beyond just raw speed, there is another incredibly critical factor to think about, especially for mobile users, and that is CPU utilization. WireGuard's ultra-efficient structure means it sips a tiny fraction of your device's processing power. We're talking just 9.8% on the server and 8.3% on the client. OpenVPN, because it is forced to constantly cross that user kernel boundary twice for every single packet of data it handles, absolutely devours your CPU cycles, hitting nearly 30% usage on the client side. So if you're running a VPN on a smartphone, OpenVPN is going to drain your battery significantly faster than WireGuard will. All right, so up to this point, we've clearly established that the underlying protocols, the actual engines powering these VPNs, are highly sophisticated, mathematically secure, and rigorously tested pieces of tech. But here is where we need to execute a hard pivot. What actually happens when you take these wildly secure protocols and package them into free mobile apps? Think of it this way. If the protocol is this high-performance, bulletproof engine, the app itself is the car housing it. And unfortunately, as a major research study recently revealed, a lot of the cars on the market today are incredibly dangerous to drive. To uncover what these apps are actually doing behind the scenes, researchers at CSIRO built a custom testbed. They took 283 different Android VPN apps that have been downloaded by millions of everyday users, and they monitored them in the real world. They essentially set up a dual-stack Wi-Fi access point to act as a middleman. This allowed them to intercept and analyze all the traffic being transmitted between the mobile device and the internet. They were not just taking these apps' marketing claims at face value. They were looking at the raw data packets to see exactly how these apps handled user information, where they were sending it, and who was intercepting it along the way. And what they found is, well, it's truly staggering. Get this, 75% of the free VPN apps they tested, apps explicitly claiming to protect your online privacy, actually embed third-party tracking libraries directly into their source code. Just think about the profound irony there for a second. Millions of people are downloading these apps specifically to stop their internet service providers and random advertisers from tracking their browsing habits. Yet the very tool they're trusting to shield them is actively monitoring their behavior, collecting analytics, and turning around to serve them targeted advertisements. So, the crucial point we have to understand is that this tracking goes way beyond just monitoring what websites you visit. When you install any app, it asks for certain permissions, right? Well, the researchers found that an overwhelming 82% of these VPN apps requested permissions to access highly sensitive resources on your phone that have absolutely nothing to do with running a secure tunnel. We are talking about apps demanding access to read your private SMS text messages, harvest your entire address book, or even inspect the system logs of every other app on your phone. Some even demand permissions to draw unwanted, completely unclosable ads right over your screen. It completely obliterates any promise of privacy. Oh, and it gets worse. When the researchers ran these 283 apps through VirusTotal, which is this massive online aggregator of over 100 different antivirus scanners, they discovered that over a third of them, exactly 38%, tested positive for malware. Let's be clear, we are not just talking about aggressive, annoying advertising here. We are talking about literal malicious software, adware, riskware, and Trojans. Apps with highly rated profiles and massive install bases, like IKEv2 and EasyVPN, were found to be harboring adware. Another app, which promised this fancy dynamic routing cloud-based accelerating system, actually contained spyware, all while actively demanding permissions to read and send your text messages. Millions of users trust these apps, completely unaware that they're carrying a malicious payload in their pocket. Now, what's really interesting and frankly terrifying about this next part is the sheer incompetence at play. Because even if a developer isn't intentionally malicious, a simple misconfiguration can completely destroy your privacy. When a VPN is turned on, literally all of your data is supposed to be forced through that encrypted tunnel. But it turns out 84% of the tested apps fail to route IPv6 traffic properly. That means your actual real IP address is just leaking right out onto the public internet. On top of that, 66% leak DNS requests completely outside the tunnel. So any commercial Wi-Fi hotspot or government surveillance agency can see exactly which websites you are visiting, completely bypassing the anonymity you thought you were paying for. But out of everything in this entire explainer, this one finding is the absolute kicker. 18% of these VPN apps implement tunneling protocols without any encryption whatsoever. Just let that sink in. Nearly 1 in 5 of these so-called privacy apps goes through the entire process of routing your traffic to a remote server somewhere, but they literally do not even bother to turn on the encryption engine we discussed at the very beginning. Your data is just flying across the public internet in plain text, totally readable by anyone who wants to scoop it up. It is literally digital snake oil. So how on earth do we navigate this minefield? Well, we've synthesized all this hard data into a final playbook for you. First, you've got to choose your protocol wisely. If you need maximum speed, low latency, and you want to save your phone's battery, you absolutely want an app built around WireGuard. If you find yourself in a highly restrictive environment and you desperately need to bypass censorship by making your traffic look like normal web browsing, OpenVPN configured over TCP port 443 is your best bet. And for native enterprise integration, IKEv2 is still a really solid mid-range choice. But crucially, And this is the big takeaway. You must decouple the protocol from the app itself. Our absolute strongest warning here: avoid highly rated free mobile apps. Always remember, if the service is free, you are the product. Watch out for those hidden trackers, check the app permissions carefully, and always verify who is actually operating the servers your data is passing through. Look, the underlying math and technology behind a secure encrypted tunnel is phenomenal. It's incredibly powerful. But a secure engine means absolutely zero if the vehicle you're driving it in is actively compromised from the inside. So the next time you open your phone and tap that big connect button on your screen, ask yourself, is your privacy app actually the one spying on you? We highly encourage you to go into your settings right now and review the permissions of whatever VPN you have installed. Because when it comes to your digital privacy, knowledge really is your best defense. Thanks so much for joining us on this explainer, and we will see you next time.